Insight Factor. We're Jemmy and I, exploring a new blog post by Mr. Len Kaplan, CEO of CDML and MSP in Queens, NY, offering network management, VoIP and UCAS, cybersecurity, compliance, IaaS, cloud, and Microsoft 365 and Azure. If you're a small business owner or manage IT for a growing organization, this episode is for you. Stay tuned.
So, looks like we're diving into ADA website compliance today, huh?
You got it. It's a topic a lot of small business owners might not have on their radar, but it's super important.
Definitely crucial. And this blog post by Len Kaplan really highlights some updates that could have a big impact. Like, did you know that updated digital accessibility guidelines actually went into effect last year?
Really? I had no idea. When exactly?
April 24th, 2024.
Wow, so we're already a year in.
Yeah, and the deadline for small businesses to fully comply is April 26th, 2027.
Okay, so we have 3 years, but honestly, I'm a little lost. Where do we even begin? This post mentions WCAG 2.1 Level AA. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Okay, so it's about making websites accessible.
Exactly. It's a set of standards to ensure digital content is accessible to people with disabilities.
Got it. And what's Level AA all about?
So there are actually 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA, with AAA being the most stringent.
Okay, so like a grading system. Why wouldn't everyone just go for AAA then?
Well, aiming for the highest level is great, but it might not be feasible for all businesses, especially smaller ones. Level AA kind of strikes a good balance between accessibility and what's practical, covers the most common issues users with disabilities face.
So focusing on Level AA is a good starting point for most small businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Ensures you meet the core requirements without getting bogged down by super complex implementations.
That makes sense. So let's dive into Level AA compliance. What does that look like in practice?
The blog post highlights a bunch of key features. One big one is alt text for images.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. What's the deal with that?
It's super important for folks who use screen readers. Alt text lets them understand the content of images. Otherwise, it's just a blank space, you know?
Right, so it's like describing the image verbally so everyone can access the information.
Exactly. And then there's keyboard navigation. This is huge for people who can't use a mouse.
So they can still browse the site.
Yeah, make sure they can get to every part of your website using just the keyboard. Like, if your mouse ever stopped working, you know how frustrating it is to navigate.
Oh yeah, totally. I remember when my trackpad died and I was stuck tabbing through everything. Took forever.
Exactly. And now imagine that frustration, but like all the time. That's why keyboard navigation is so important.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got alt text and keyboard navigation. What else is on the list?
A clear, logical heading structure is key too.
Like using H1, H2, those tags?
Yep. Not only makes it easier for everyone to read and scan, but it helps screen readers understand the hierarchy of the information on your pages, like an outline.
Right, so it's organized and accessible at the same time.
Exactly. And then there's color contrast, which is the difference in light between text and its background.
I've definitely been on sites where that was a problem, even for me. Like light gray text on white. So hard to read.
Yeah, exactly. Now imagine having low vision. That subtle difference can make it impossible to read.
Oh, wow, you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. What about videos? Those need to be accessible too, right?
Absolutely. Captions are essential for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing.
And they're helpful for everyone. I always watch videos on a mute in public.
Exactly. Captions let you follow along without disturbing anyone. What about links?
Yeah, what about them?
So, descriptive link text is crucial. Instead of those vague, click here links, use text that describes where the link goes.
So instead of just saying, go over there, you're giving clear directions. Makes sense.
Exactly. And since we're talking about directions, consistent and predictable navigation is another biggie. People should be able to find their way around no matter what page they're on.
Like having a clear menu that's the same on every page,
Right.
so people don't get lost.
Exactly. And then forms. Forms can be a real pain if they're not designed well.
Forms can be frustrating, period.
For sure. But clear labels for each field and good error messages are really important.
So people know what information they need to give and if they messed up.
Exactly. We've all been there trying to figure out what a form wants from us or why it's not working.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've got alt text, keyboard navigation, headings, color contrast, captions, descriptive link text, consistent navigation, and accessible forms. Whew, that's a lot. Anything else?
A couple more things. Resizable text is important, so people can make the font bigger if they have low vision.
Oh, right.
And then there are ARIA landmarks, which are like signposts in the code that help screen readers understand the layout of the website.
So it's like labeling different sections in a library.
Mm.
Helps people find what they need.
Exactly. It's all about making the website as accessible as possible, both visually and in terms of how it's coded.
I see. It's a lot to think about.
It can seem daunting, but there are resources out there to help, and even small steps can make a big difference.
That's good to know. So let's say we realize our website needs some work. What's the first step?
The first step is an accessibility audit. Basically, you check your website against those W2CAG 2.1 level AA standards we talked about.
Right. So an audit helps us see what needs fixing. What happens after that?
Once you know the issues, you prioritize them. Fix the most critical stuff first.
Okay, so don't try to do everything at once.
Right. You might need to add alt text to images, improve color contrast, fix your headings, or make sure your forms are accessible.
So content updates and technical changes to the website's code.
Exactly. And it's super important to train your team on these accessibility requirements so that everyone who works on the website knows how to create accessible content from the start.
That makes sense. Everyone needs to be on board.
Definitely. And ideally, you would also test your website with real users who use assistive technology. Their feedback can be really valuable.
Oh, that's a good idea, getting firsthand feedback.
Yeah, for sure. And remember, accessibility isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. You got to keep monitoring and updating your website as technology changes.
Like anything else in business, you're always striving to improve.
Exactly. Now, before we dive into the specifics of WCAG 2.1 Level AA, with its 4 principles, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, I think we should shift gears a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
What are we shifting to?
Let's talk about what CDML, the company behind this blog post, offers to help small businesses like yours actually get compliant.
Great idea. They seem to have a pretty thorough approach to this whole thing, and we'll be back after the break to explore those services in part 2 of this deep dive.
So we were about to get into CDML services before the break.
Right, and I think this is where it gets really practical for our listeners, actually figuring out how to get compliant. It can feel overwhelming.
Definitely. So first up, they offer these ADA digital accessibility assessments.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Seems like a good starting point. It is. It's like a full checkup for your website based on those WCIC 2.1 level AA standards we talked about.
So they'll find any problems and tell you how to fix them.
Exactly, like having a mechanic for your website, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Love that analogy. Okay, but what if we're also worried about things like hackers, data breaches? Do they handle that too?
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is huge for any business these days. That's where their cybersecurity and compliance audits come in.
Okay, so they'll look for vulnerabilities.
Yeah, they assess your systems, make sure you're meeting industry standards, and help you put safeguards in place.
To protect your business and your customers' data.
Exactly. It's like a security system for your whole digital operation.
That's reassuring. But cybersecurity isn't the only thing, right? What about all those data privacy regulations we keep hearing about?
You're right. Things like HIPAA for healthcare data, the NYDFS cybersecurity regulation, they're becoming more and more important.
Especially with all the sensitive information businesses handle.
Yeah, and luckily, CDML also offers data protection and privacy compliance services.
So they help you navigate all those rules.
Right, making sure you're protecting customer privacy.
Wow, they really do cover a lot. Sort of one-stop shop for compliance.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the people involved, Even with the best security and an accessible website, things can go wrong if employees don't know what they're doing.
You're totally right. The human factor is key. And that's why I was impressed that CDML includes employee training in their services.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, they train your team on everything from digital accessibility to cybersecurity best practices.
So everyone's on the same page and knows how to keep things safe and accessible.
It's about creating a culture of compliance. Everyone understanding their role in protecting data, ensuring accessibility, and mitigating risks.
It's like that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. Investing in training up front can save you so much trouble later on. Okay, so we've seen that CDML has a lot to offer, but let's bring it back to AD compliance. Why should small businesses take action now, even though the deadline isn't for a few years?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, the blog post is pretty clear about this. Delaying compliance can open you up to legal risks, even lawsuits.
And lawsuits are expensive, especially for a small business.
Yeah, they can be devastating.
Yeah.
But besides the legal side, there are other advantages to being proactive about ADA compliance.
Like what?
Well, we talked about this a little earlier, but by making your website accessible, you're reaching a much wider audience.
Including people with disabilities.
Exactly. And that's a big chunk of the population. More potential customers, more engagement, and a better reputation for your brand.
So it's not just about avoiding problems, it's about growing your business and doing the right thing.
Exactly. And don't forget the SEO benefits we mentioned. Accessible websites tend to rank better in search results.
More visibility, more traffic. It's amazing how something as simple as alt text can make such a difference.
It all ties together, and that's why I think this blog post by Len Kaplan is so helpful. It shines a light on an issue that many small businesses might be overlooking and gives them practical steps to take.
I agree. It's a good reminder that ADA compliance isn't just a box to check. It's a smart business move. But with all this information, it's hard to know where to start. What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Okay, so first of all, remember, those updated guidelines are here, and the deadline is approaching. The sooner you start working on compliance, the better.
So don't wait. But also, don't panic. There's help available.
Exactly. Second, achieving ADA compliance doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming project. Start with an accessibility audit, prioritize the issues, and break it down into smaller steps.
Like any big project, right? Smaller chunks are easier to manage.
Exactly. And third, and maybe most importantly, remember that ADA compliance is an investment, not just a cost.
It's about creating a better experience for everyone.
Right. Yeah, it's an investment in your business, your customers, and your reputation. You're making the web more inclusive and welcoming.
I like that. Okay, so are we ready to tackle those 4 principles of WC 2.1 level AA now?
Perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust.
Yeah, let's dive into those and see how they translate to actual website features and functionality. Okay, so let's dig into those 4 principles of WSAG 2.1 level AA. Perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Sounds kind of technical.
It is a bit, but they're really the foundation for creating an inclusive digital experience.
All right, let's break them down. First up, perceivable. What's that all about?
Perceivable basically means that users can get the information on your website no matter their sensory abilities. So making sure content is available to different senses.
So it's not just about seeing the website, it's about making sure the info can be accessed through other senses too.
Exactly. Think back to those alt text descriptions for images. Someone who's blind or visually impaired using a screen reader can hear what the image is about thanks to alt text. It's like turning visual content into audio.
Makes sense, like translating a picture into words so everyone gets it.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just images. Captions for videos, transcripts for audio, even using color combos with good contrast for people with low vision.
It's about making sure the information is available to everyone, no matter their abilities.
Right. Okay, second principle. Operable.
Operable, so like, it works.
Kinda, but more specific. It means all users, regardless of physical abilities, can interact with the website. All the functionality needs to be available through different input methods.
So not just seeing the buttons and links, but being able to actually use them.
Exactly. Even if you can't use a mouse or have limited mobility, remember keyboard navigation.
Yeah.
That's a key part of operability. You should be able to navigate the whole site using just your keyboard. No getting stuck.
Makes sense. Giving everyone equal access however they're interacting with the site.
Right. And it's not just navigation. Drop-down menus, forms, all those interactive elements need to be designed with accessibility in mind.
Creating a user experience that works for everyone.
Exactly. Okay, third principle. Understandable. This one seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, understandable. It's got to be clear, right?
Right, but there's more to it. It means both the information and how you use the website are easy to understand. So both the content and the way you interact with it.
So clear language, simple navigation, the whole experience is user-friendly.
Exactly. Think plain language, no jargon, structuring content logically, making the website easy to understand the content and how it works.
Right, right. No confusing instructions or error messages.
Exactly. Clear instructions, helpful error messages, consistent design throughout the site. Remember those frustrating forms we talked about?
Wow, those are the worst.
Understandable design makes sure using your website is smooth and intuitive for everyone.
Okay, last principle, robust. What does that mean for a website?
Robust means your website works with a wide range of technologies, including assistive technologies like screen readers. It's about making sure your website stays accessible even as technology changes.
So it's about building a site that can adapt, be accessed on different devices and software now and in the future.
Exactly. Using valid code, following web standards, making sure different browsers and assistive technologies can interpret your website. It's like building a strong foundation for accessibility.
I see. A foundation that works for different users and their needs, no matter how they're accessing the website.
Exactly. And remember, those WCAG guidelines are always evolving as technology changes. Building a robust website means you're setting yourself up for long-term accessibility.
I see. These four principles really help us understand what it means to create a truly accessible website.
It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about thinking about all users and creating a digital experience that welcomes everyone.
Well said. And I think this brings us to that food for thought we mentioned earlier. Think about a time you encountered a website that was difficult to use. How did it make you feel? Could ADA compliance have made a difference?
That's a great question for everyone to consider. It makes you think about your own online experiences and how they might be different for people who face accessibility barriers every day.
It does. And as we wrap up this deep dive into ADA website compliance, we want to leave you with this. Accessibility matters. Whether you're a business owner, a developer, or just a user, remember that it's about creating a better web for everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. This is Jemmy and Nye signing off.